Okay, I think we can get started now. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our first webinar, Fighting Artificial Turf in New Jersey. My name is Taylor McFarland. I'm the Conservation Program Manager for the Sierra Club New Jersey chapter. The Sierra Club is the oldest and largest environmental nonprofit in the nation. This webinar is also sponsored by ANJEC, Pinelands Preservation Alliance, and Waterspirit. ANJEC, also known as the Association of New Jersey Environmental Commissions, is a statewide nonprofit organization dedicated to supporting environmental commissions, green teams, open space committees, and municipal officials in their efforts to strengthen their communities and protect the environment. ANJEC provides education, training, and advocacy at both the local and state levels. The Pinelands Preservation Alliance is the leading voice for protecting the natural and cultural resources of the New Jersey Pinelands. Waterspirit is a spiritual ecology nonprofit offering programming and advocacy centered on sacred water, the source and sustainer of all life. Here is a quick snapshot of today's webinar. We're going to touch on several topics, including what is artificial turf, the environmental and health impacts of turf, what's driving the demand. We'll look at some case studies of high-use natural grass fields, go over the total cost of ownership of artificial turf compared to natural grass, discuss how you can get involved on both a local and state level, and finally end with a Q&A. Speakers include Jean and Gregg Lehmberg and Anna Grossman. But first, actually, I'll describe some of the speakers. Jean Lehmberg is a retired elementary school teacher whose favorite lessons were those that taught environmental stewardship. She's an alumni of Judith Inc.'s course Beyond Plastics Pollution and founding member of Citizens for Responsible Athletic Field Development. Gregg Lehmberg is a retired R&D and supply chain engineer and founding member of Citizens for Responsible Athletic Field Development. Anna Grossman is an environmental advocate from the Sustainable Montclair Grassroots Collective. Okay, but first we're going to start off with a quick survey question, and let me get that up right now. So let's see. So the survey question is, which state, despite being the country's fifth smallest, boasts almost 12% of turf manufactured field turf's total U.S. installation? Is it Connecticut, New Jersey, or New Hampshire? Wait, maybe some 10 more seconds. Polls are coming in. So the correct answer is New Jersey. All right. And so to start us off, Jean Lehmberg is going to do a deep dive into what is artificial turf. Jean.
Thank you, Taylor. Throughout New Jersey, the natural grass on schoolyards and in parks is being replaced with artificial or synthetic turf athletic fields. From a distance, the artificial turf looks nearly identical to the natural grass just beyond the red-orange running track. Even when standing on the field, the plastic grass almost looks real, but the remnant of artificial turf stored under the bleachers reveals that it is a plastic carpet with a polyurethane backing and weep holes to allow the water to drain through it. And while artificial turf may look pretty, the manufacturing and construction processes for creating them are not. Healthy natural grass fields serve as carbon sinks, sequestering CO2 from the atmosphere and storing it in the root zone and soil. When it is replaced by an artificial turf field, the existing natural grass is ripped up and removed along with the topsoil and some subsoil. In order to provide a stable base, the remaining subsoil is highly compacted, becoming an impermeable surface. This illustration shows the many layers that are placed on top of the compacted subsoil, beginning with a geotextile barrier and followed by drainage stones and pipes, a leveling layer, a shock pad, and the plastic grass carpet. A layer of infill, usually crumb rubber, is spread on top of the carpet and in between the blades of plastic grass. The majority of plastics, including the polyethylene used in artificial turf, is produced from ethane, a non-renewable fossil fuel that is extracted from the earth via fracking. The ethane is transported to a processing facility where it goes through a polymerization process and eventually becomes pre-production pellets, also known as nurdles. Although they are only slightly larger than the tip of a pencil, they are the feedstock of plastic products, including artificial turf. The nurdles are melted and chemical additives, including plasticizers, UV stabilizers, flame retardants, and pigments, are added to the liquid to provide the finished products with a variety of desired characteristics. Any color synthetic pigment could be added to the liquid plastic, but green is deliberately chosen to send the subliminal message that is real live grass, not plastic grass. The liquid plastic is extruded to form yarn that will become the blades of plastic grass. Per and polyfluoroalkyl substances, aka PFAS, are used as a processing aid and have been found in the plastic carpet blades and backing samples tested by the Ecology Center and Pier. About 40,000 pounds of plastic is used to create an average size plastic grass carpet, which is the equivalent of 46 million plastic straws or 3.2 million plastic bags, or more than 2 million plastic bottles. Worn out synthetic rubber tires are ground into crumb rubber, which is currently the most common infill. It is used to hold the blades of plastic grass upright and provide cushioning. The amount of infill required will vary from field to field. A plastic grass field like this one will require a minimum of 150,000 pounds of crumb rubber infill, which is equal to about 75 of these super sacks of crumb rubber. The crumb rubber infill is considered a primary microplastic because it arrives at the field in bits smaller than 5 millimeters in length. Each artificial turf carpet contains millions of blades of plastic grass. Due to the wear and tear of sports activities and exposure to the elements, blades of plastic grass break apart, becoming secondary microplastics. It is important to note that plastic does not break down or biodegrade. It continues to break apart into increasingly smaller pieces. The microplastics do not remain on the artificial turf field. Field users carry microplastics off the field on their skin, hair, clothing, and shoes. When it rains, broken blades of plastic grass and pieces of crumb rubber infill float off this school district's artificial turf field and onto the poured-in-place track and the cement walkway that encircles the artificial turf field and the catch basin cover. Peering through the holes in the catch basin cover reveals the field drainage pipes that enable water to drain quickly off the field and into the storm drain system outside the stadium. Also visible at the bottom of the catch basin are bits of infill and synthetic rubber from the track. When there is heavy rain, the stairs that enable visitors to access the field enable crumb rubber and broken blades of grass to float out of the stadium and onto the soil and then into the street. Next, Taylor will discuss the health and safety and environmental impacts of artificial turf.
Thank you, Jean. Jean mentioned an average size athletic field has 40,000 pounds of plastic and 150,000 pounds of rubber infill. Each synthetic turf field loses 0.5 to 8% of its blades annually, and that yields about 200 to 3,200 pounds of plastic waste to our environment per year. These microplastics migrate off the field into our air, our soil, and our oceans and waterways. They can be inhaled or ingested by animals and humans, potentially causing further health issues depending on the size and concentration. These plastic artificial blades contain harmful chemicals such as PFAS that is known to harm human health and the environment. PFAS are known as suspected carcinogens, neurotoxins, endocrine disrupting compounds, and respiratory irritants. These chemicals have been linked to numerous health issues, including cancer, nervous system toxicity, immune dysfunction, thyroid disease, and cardiovascular disease. PFAS concentrations of concern have been measured in surface water samples collected near synthetic turf fields. Water from precipitation is collected after it filters through the turf, carrying whatever heavy metals, PFAS, and microplastic it picks up along the way, which are then released into the environment without any kind of wastewater treatment. A European Commission report in 2018, next slide, Jackie, estimated that 1 to 4% of field infill needs to be replaced yearly due to migrating off-site or compacting. Crumb rubber infill used in artificial turf can contain heavy metals like lead, zinc, and chromium. They pose a health concern through skin contact, inhalation, or ingestion when playing on surfaces. These are environmental concerns when the crumb rubber migrates off the field, as Jean showed. These metals can leak into the soil and surrounding water systems when the turf is exposed to rain or irrigation, potentially harming aquatic life and soil ecosystems. On a warm day, synthetic turf radiates more heat than natural grass, leading to extreme temperatures and contributing to heat island effect. Artificial turf can be 20 to 50 degrees hotter. These elevated surface temperatures have been shown to contribute to heat-related illness. Players playing on synthetic turf can melt shoes, as you see in this photo, blister hands and feet, and induce dehydration and heat stroke. Consequently, climate change will exacerbate exercise-related heat stresses for athletes and people playing on artificial turf. Next slide. This photo was taken by Gregg Lehmberg at Keller Field, the artificial Keller Field in Westfield, New Jersey, this past June, taken at 2:27 p.m. You can see the outside temperature, it was 96 degrees, but the turf field was 62 degrees hotter, coming in at 158 degrees. Next slide. This is the same field in May of 2022. You can see the natural grass is just as hot as the air temperature, coming in at 97 degrees, while the plastic artificial turf is 145 degrees. The same temperature, next slide, next click, yeah, same temperature as the asphalt. So the artificial turf field is just as hot as the asphalt. For high school athletes, the prevalence of extreme heat is leading to escalated heat-related illness, injuries, hospitalizations, and death. Heat stroke is the third common cause of sudden death among high school athletes, behind cardiac arrest and traumatic brain injuries. 67 high school athletes have died from exertion heat illness since 1982, according to the National Center for Catastrophic Sport Injury Research. 52 of those deaths happened in August during preseason, and 94 of those deaths were football linemen. Next slide. This is Keller Field, the photo you just saw, and it demonstrates the heat island effect. As artificial turf fields absorb energy from the sun, they form heat islands that become much hotter than surrounding areas. as artificial turf contributes to the heat island effect by significantly increasing surface temperatures compared to natural grass, leading to warmer urban areas due to its inability to evaporate water and cool the surrounding area, essentially acting like another heat absorbing surface similar to asphalt, further exacerbating the already elevated temperatures in the city. This graphic summarizes, you can continue to click. I know that's one of those things. Summarizes the health and environmental impacts of artificial turf that I really just discussed, but summarizes nicely in this photo. Water from precipitation is collected after it filters through the turf, carrying whatever heavy metals, PFAS, and microplastics it picks up along the way, which are then released into the surrounding environment and possibly our drinking water. Then, with high temperatures, artificial turf creates a heat island effect, which can cause heat stressors for athletes playing on the field and increases the rate at which VOCs can be off-gassed, which ultimately contributes to local air pollution. Next slide. A synthetic turf field lasts around 8 to 12 years on average. Thousands of pounds of infill and plastic carpet must be removed at disposal. Mixed plastic waste, such as synthetic turf, is not recyclable using conventional methods. Therefore, they are typically sent to landfills where they remain for centuries. Sometimes turf is improperly dumped outside of landfills, and that discarded turf sits continuously shedding the microplastics, the heavy metals, the PFAS, and other toxic chemicals and greenhouse gases. In response to the revelations of these hazards, the Children's Environmental Health Center at Mount Sinai Hospital in New York City recommends against the installation of artificial turf playing fields and surfaces due to the uncertainties surrounding the safety of these products and the potential for dangerous heat and chemical exposures. Now, Jean will discuss what is driving the demand for artificial turf.
Thank you, Taylor. The proliferation of artificial turf athletic fields is due to a high demand for playing surfaces to accommodate youth sports teams, including flag and tackle football, baseball and softball, soccer, lacrosse, field hockey, rugby, and ultimate frisbee. The majority of team sports are played by both boys and girls. Sports leagues exist for both recreational and competitive levels of play. Club and travel teams practice multiple days per week and require more field time. Sports seasons are a thing of the past. Many sports hold practices and play games year-round. Children begin playing sports as toddlers, and when they get to high school, playing on a sports team can be an avenue to attending college and receiving scholarships. Most communities do not have natural grass athletic fields. They have schoolyards and parks that have been pressed into service as athletic fields. These surfaces were not designed to withstand sports activities, do not have drainage or irrigation systems, and receive inadequate maintenance. It is no wonder that athletes and their parents are upset when practices and games are scheduled for surfaces that look like this, or when events are canceled due to wet fields. Coaches and parents respond by complaining about field conditions to town decision makers. Town officials often respond to complaints about the lack of playable fields by commissioning a parks master plan. A firm that includes architects, engineers, and planners is hired to design a parks master plan that includes input from community members. Residents are asked to choose from a list of park improvements. In my town, the choices did not include high-use natural grass athletic fields, only artificial turf. Residents are often unaware artificial turf athletic fields are under consideration until a conceptual field plan is revealed at a town council or board of education meeting. Sports leagues encourage youth athletes to advocate for artificial turf athletic fields at town and board of ed meetings. This sets up a dynamic where elected officials and residents who object to artificial turf are labeled as not caring about kids. The multi-billion-dollar artificial turf industry is currently not regulated by any government agency, even though the product contains toxic chemicals and the primary users are children and adolescents. This lack of regulations enables the industry to make misleading claims about health, safety, and sustainability. This is similar to how tobacco companies marketed cigarettes to unsuspecting consumers in the mid-20th century. In an effort to make sports activities inclusive, artificial turf fields are installed in underserved communities with funding from grants and donations. The popularity of youth travel sports leagues has led to a rise in destination sports complexes, like this one that will be installed in Middlesex County. It will consist of 14 artificial turf athletic fields, along with expanded parking facilities. The New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection not only allows artificial turf fields to exist, it also funds their installation through the Green Acres program. Next, Gregg will discuss high-use natural grass athletic fields.
So there are obviously many concerns about artificial turf, but what are the alternatives? You've probably heard that grass fields don't work, but why is that? As mentioned earlier, we mistakenly think of the parks and schoolyards that our kids play sports in as athletic fields when they are really simply grassy areas that have been pressed into service for sports activity. They were never designed for athletic activity, and they were not maintained as sports fields. The results are apparent: uneven surfaces and soil compaction that results in bare spots and weed infestation. So how can grass athletic fields be successful? First, they need to be designed and built for athletic use. Some basic questions need to be answered, including who are the field users? What sports will be played on it? Is the field for games or practices? What's the rainout and drought tolerance? What level of bare spots and weeds are acceptable? Once the expectations are set, design decisions can be made. If being virtually rainout proof is a must, then a drainage system is probably needed. If irrigation may be warranted to keep the grass healthy during dry spells, laser grading, soil amendments, and grass variety selection should all be considered. With organic maintenance, soil testing is a fundamental to understanding its composition and what amendments it may need. These amendments will improve soil health over time, making the grass stronger. By definition, organic practices would not use synthetic pesticides or fertilizers. Adding just a small amount of organic matter helps the soil absorb and retain more rainwater, nearly 1 inch for every 1%. And unlike artificial turf, which contributes to climate change, natural grass sequesters carbon and stores it in the roots and soil. In order to achieve consistent high-quality results, it's important to invest in a sports field manager and a trained staff to develop and execute the maintenance program. Soil compaction is the most common cause of bare spots and weed infestation. Frequent aeration is a simple solution to soil compaction. Keep the soil soft. This allows water, oxygen, and nutrients to flow down to the roots where they can be absorbed by the plant. Top dressing, overseeding, provide fresh nutrients, a smooth surface, and new growth. Mowing height and frequency will vary depending on the sport and the season of the year. The sports field manager determines when to aerate, irrigate, and add nutrients. Periodic sod repairs may be needed throughout the season in high-use areas such as goal mouths. So it all sounds good on paper. What about in practice? The Toxic Use Reduction Institute conducted several case studies to understand the impact of organic practices. 2 such studies were done in Springfield and Marblehead, Mass. Both communities began managing their sports fields organically several years earlier. The studies concluded that a safe, good quality grass playing surface can be maintained when the fields were used between 1,000 and 1,800 hours per year, far more than the 650 to 800 hours often cited as the maximum for a grass field. Montgomery County, Maryland Parks Department manages 280 fields to service over 1 million residents. They only have 4 artificial turf fields in the county system, and 1 is currently out of service due to unsafe conditions. The Maryland Soccerplex is a nonprofit organization that operates 24 fields, 21 of which are natural grass. These are pristine fields that see heavy use from youth and adult athletes throughout most of the year, often seeing 1,000 hours of play per field. They recently completed a multi-year renovation project, adding drainage to their grass fields, making them virtually rainout-proof. In conclusion, natural grass athletic fields can provide excellent safety, durability, and playing conditions while protecting field users, air, water, soil, and the climate from toxic chemicals and greenhouse gases when maintained organically by trained professionals.
Thanks, Greg. We're going to do another quiz question. Question is, which is more costly to build and maintain, a grass field or an artificial turf field? There should be a prompt right now on your screen, so continue to vote, and you'll find the answer in Gregg's cost and economics portion.
Okay, so switching gears to financials. Next slide. In this section, I'll provide a summary of the total cost of ownership over 20 years, comparing an artificial turf field to an organically maintained grass field. These costs were derived from an actual project budget that was developed in 2023, as well as some in-depth discussions with a professional sports field manager here in New Jersey. Assume we start with a typical park or schoolyard, and we'll either construct an artificial turf field or renovate that space into a high-use natural grass athletic field maintained organically. Every situation will be somewhat different, but the following will provide an estimate of the cost for each type of field. The analysis is based on a field of 100,000 square feet, approximately the area of a typical multi-purpose rectangular field, including sidelines. The main cost component for an artificial turf field is the construction of the turf base, which includes all the field components described earlier. Other modifications to the site that typically accompany an artificial field are also included, bringing the total construction cost to $2.7 million. Artificial fields are an impermeable surface, so stormwater management infrastructure is typically needed to meet NJDEP requirements for runoff, adding $670,000. A 15% contingency is typical for a construction project to handle unforeseen expenses. Annual maintenance costs multiplied by 20 years totals $506,000. Plastic carpet and infill wear out over time and typically need to be replaced every 8 to 12 years for player safety and quality of play. A 10-year replacement cycle was assumed So 2 replacements are included at $7 per square foot or $700,000 each cycle. Generally, these projects will be funded with bonds, so the debt service on the bonds needs to be considered. For simplicity, the assumption is that the entire investment cost of the project is funded with 10-year bonds at 3.5% interest, adding $1.35 million. The total cost of ownership for an artificial turf field in this example is $7.1 million over 20 years. A natural grass field renovation is a much simpler and less costly undertaking. The cost of $430,000 to renovate a grass field is a fraction of the cost to construct an artificial field. Unlike an artificial field, a grass field is a permeable surface. Proper maintenance and soil amendments will actually improve water absorption and reduce runoff. So while it is unlikely that stormwater management will be necessary, the cost is included here as a worst-case scenario. The annual maintenance cost of $1.2 million for a grass field over 20 years is significantly higher than for an artificial field, but that's before considering the carpet replacement costs for artificial turf. Generally, there's no need to replace an existing grass field as long as proper maintenance is done. The contingency and debt service are considerably less for a grass field since the construction costs are so much lower. The total cost for renovating a grass field with organic maintenance is $2.9 million. That makes an artificial field about 2.5 times more expensive than a grass field over 20 years. So that's the answer to your survey question. So here are the details of the construction costs that were considered. For artificial turf, constructing the turf base is the most significant cost. Stormwater management was called out as a separate line item. The entire building site is disrupted during the field installation. So there are a number of additional costs, including demolition, grading, seeding, mulching, and erosion control that need to be considered, and fencing and walkways are typically added. These fields are engineered products that require design and construction management, bringing the total construction cost for an artificial turf field, including stormwater management and contingency, just under $3.9 million. The approach for natural grass field renovation is quite different. The field should be assessed by an expert to understand things like soil composition, unwanted plant species, and nutrient deficiencies. Drainage and irrigation are assumed to be required in this analysis to ensure maximum playing time throughout the year with limited field closures. Stormwater management is included as a worst case. Grading, top dressing, soil amendments, and seeding are all needed to begin to develop a top quality playing surface. The need to purchase maintenance equipment, including a tractor, aerator, and spreader, is assumed. This equipment could be used on not just this field, but on multiple fields. Grass cutting equipment is assumed to exist. The total for a natural grass field renovation is just under $1.3 million, making the investment cost for an artificial field about 3 times higher than a grass field. Next. Maintenance costs are often a confusing topic. It is true that the annual maintenance cost for an artificial field is less than for a natural grass field, about $25,000 versus $60,000 shown in the charts. Both the labor and the material input costs are higher for a grass field, particularly when using organic practices. In both cases, labor is the largest cost element. The assumption is that there is a full-time sports field manager that's overseeing several fields, most likely the entire array of fields owned by a municipality or a school board. 10 fields were assumed in this example. More support staff are needed to maintain the grass fields than artificial. Consultants and contractors could alternatively be used to perform the maintenance functions if there are not enough fields to warrant full-time employees. An often overlooked cost for artificial fields is the 10-year carpet replacement cost of $700,000. Annualized, that's an additional $70,000, bringing the total maintenance cost to $96,000, or about 1.6 times more than to maintain grass. Next slide. If investment in stormwater management is not required for natural grass, the total cost for a grass field drops to under 1.9 million. That would make the cost of an artificial turf field 3.8 times higher than natural grass. So in summary, organically maintained high-use natural grass athletic fields are far more economical to build and maintain than artificial turf fields. Next will be Anna Grossman to talk about local advocacy.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Thank you for having me. I am an environmental advocate, so I have learned quite a lot about how to advocate against artificial turf this past year here in Montclair, New Jersey, where I am based. However, I've advocated against it for many years. Originally, I was focused on the recycled rubber crumb, and that's before we realized that actually the carpet that artificial turf uses, the plastic blades, are just as bad, if not worse. It's all bad. So I want to go through this little flow chart for anyone out there who's been listening to this thinking, this is horrible. How do I get my town to stop doing this? And that's a great question. So here's how I would approach it in New Jersey. First, decide who's installing and who's paying for the product. If this is something that is coming into your town through your Board of Ed, how is it coming through? Is it coming through as a capital expense, or are they getting a bond for it? Sometimes there's bond referenda, and those bond referenda include funding for artificial turf at athletic fields. And so you're going to want to advocate around voting against that. Be very careful because sometimes they bundle it together with other really well-deserving projects like they did in Montclair. Our schools were crumbling, and of course we wanted those repaired. And there was a $188 million bond. I voted yes, and who knew there was an artificial turf in it? Because you really have to go look in the itemized list of projects, not so much the question on the ballot that you see. So who's paying for it? How are they paying for it? And who is the elected body or appointed body who's going to be voting and deciding on the next artificial turf project? So if that's your Board of Ed, you're going to be going to Board of Ed meetings. You're going to be signing up for public comment. Get used to speaking 2 or 3 minutes and putting all of your important things in one comment, line up speakers, arrange for all of you to tackle a different topic so that you're not repeating yourselves and you're covering the whole breadth of the issue here with artificial turf. Same if it's the town council deciding to vote on a bid for an artificial turf field on one of their properties. You're going to want to go to public comment at town council meetings. You're also going to want to go to your environmental commission. You're going to want to go to your Parks and Rec commission and start talking to all the different people who are making these decisions for the community. You're going to want to look and see if town council has resolutions. I mean, if your town has resolutions or ordinances that cover artificial turf or impervious surfaces, and see how that falls into the particular project you're looking at. You're going to want to see if your Board of Ed has a sustainability and environmental conservation policy. If they don't now, start working on that now before the next artificial turf project, because you really can't say yes to artificial turf if you believe in sustainability and environmental conservation. If it's at the county level, a lot of parks and athletic fields are managed and installed by the county. You're going to want to go to those meetings and start speaking at public comment and having meetings with the people who handle the parks in your particular county. And Taylor will discuss the state advocacy. So I'll leave that alone. But yeah, you're going to want to talk and lobby and get to know your elected and appointed officials, the various commissions that handle this. Be proactive before something comes up. Find out how old your existing fields are. If you have grass fields, are they being managed properly? The best way to avoid an artificial turf field is to get really great turf grass management experts in the right place. So make sure that your facilities committee at the BOE has access to an expert who can help them maintain their grass fields with top of the line practices. And then they might not even need an artificial turf field or think that they need one if they have a good grass field. Same with the Parks and Recs Commission. Everybody's trying to meet the need for a lot of outdoor activities, the demand. And here's the problem with artificial turf, one of the many problems. It is the only product made of pretty much scrap waste, chemical, toxic material, where the hardest people to convince sometimes that this is the worst thing possible are parents. Anything else, if you said, hey, I have this carpet for your nursery and it has PFAS in it and it's going to shed microplastics that are going to end up in your child's food and in their body eventually, and maybe in their breast milk when they become a parent and breastfeed or whatever. Would you like it? I'll give it to you for free. Every parent would say, no, I don't want that in my house. But when it comes to putting it as an athletic field, the marketing for these products is so intense that a lot of people genuinely believe that these surfaces are the best option for sports. And unfortunately, environmentally, they're not the best option. And certainly, as you saw, Mount Sinai Children's Environmental Health Center advises against installing them. So from a pediatric environmental health perspective, certainly they are not the best choice. And I strongly believe, as Gregg has shown you, that grass fields are a solution and they can be maintained incredibly, and we have examples and evidence to back that up. And certainly that's what people used to use before marketing came through. So you're going to want to do a lot of education because people have really learned there's been so much greenwashing, really, is what it comes down to. And so you're going to have to undo that with facts, evidence, always use peer-reviewed material and evidence-based information, and just try and do a lot of outreach on social media and education. And eventually, hopefully, we will have more progress. And, the same goes in terms of doing advocacy for, like a lot of people in the comments thought it's outrageous that NJDP funds plastic fields through their Green Acres program. I absolutely agree. I was shocked to find that out. And it needs to stop. So do go on your social media, create an account, and at people and tell them this isn't what you should be doing for us. We believe in you, NJDP, but not like this. You got to get out of the plastic business. So I think that's about it. I think that keep an eye on who's funding it, how it's being funded, and who's deciding on whether it's going to be installed or not. Show up, speak. I used to be terrified of public speaking, and artificial turf made me get over it. You got to go out there and tell people that you believe in a better way and a better solution for our kids. Thank you.
Thanks, Anna. So next slide. On the state side, we need help advocating for state legislation to protect our environment and public health from artificial turf. We've actually been working with Senator Raj Mukherjee, who has now sponsored a resolution that would urge New Jersey DEP to cease funding of artificial turf projects and prioritize in investing natural grass playing fields. He's also introduced a statewide ban on artificial turf, which is great. But we do have a long campaign in front of us, and that includes getting an assembly sponsor and more legislation to prevent harmful artificial turf development. It's kind of almost the plastic bag ban campaign where we're fighting this on a local level, which is great, but we need at the same time a blanket state laws that will really help us. And that's what we're doing on the state side, and also fighting it on the local side. Next slide. And so again, if you are interested in learning more, the speakers here are part of a coalition that is fighting artificial turf. New Jersey Sierra Club leads it, but other organizations and dozens of residents are involved. And back in October, we did a great lobby day at the New Jersey State House where we talked to our legislators, talked to them about the harms of artificial turf. It was very successful. So we just need to continue that momentum. And what our coalition provides too is just also a space to learn more about how you can get involved on a local and state level. There's a lot of knowledge in this coalition. You're not alone. All of us are really fighting this. So if you're interested in getting more involved, shoot me an email. It's right on that slide, and I can put it in the chat. Because this is a really important topic. And then the more people we get, more grassroots, we get, the better we'll be more effective on both the local and state side. And if you're interested in learning more about artificial turf where you are in luck, this is the first of many webinars in our series, because we're going to be doing a deep dive on each subject that we presented today. So just look out for another one of our webinars, probably after the holidays. We're going to take a nice break to learn more about artificial turf and how you can get involved. And I think next is Q&A. And if you have questions, continue to put them in the chat. Let's see. So first question. Bruce Bauman, what towns have successfully blocked new artificial turf fields, and how did they accomplish this?
I could take that one, Taylor. So last year in 2023, both Westfield and Scotch Plains, the neighboring town, had projects that were moving ahead. Both towns tried through some of the mechanisms that Anna talked about, going to Board of Ed, talking to Board of Ed members, talking to town council members. We were unsuccessful in persuading enough members to vote the project down, as was Scotch Plains. However, both of us were able to, as soon as the bond ordinance to fund the projects was passed, we were able to very quickly gather enough signatures to force a referendum on that ordinance. So it ended up on the ballot in November of 23. And the public in both towns voted the projects down. So that was that was an example from our two towns. And I believe Maplewood also had a project within the last year, and they didn't have to go to a referendum. They were able to convince enough of the decision makers to take it out of the scope of the project.
Thanks, Greg. Let's go to Kip Cherry. Why are so many towns making the wrong decision? Does this relate to hours of use and the total acreage that towns need for their athletic fields?
Guess I can take that one too. Yeah, so I think it's a multifaceted answer, honestly. I think the sports community it has been convinced that artificial turf is the only way to, to have sort of all-weather play. I mean, it's not completely true, but that's the belief. There aren't many examples in New Jersey of natural grass fields being successful, because I've yet to find a township that puts, the kind of resources against it that, would make a grass field successful. And not everybody has had the opportunity to see some of these other areas that I featured in the presentation. So it gets back to, to what we said during the presentation. The poorly maintained properties that were never designed for athletic use are being compared to an engineered product, and that it's believed to be both a quick and cheap and foolproof alternative. And it's kind of certainly not cheap, and it's certainly not foolproof, and it's certainly bad for the environment.
Thanks, Greg. Next question. In some ways, isn't artificial turf better than natural grass in that no water is required?
I can take that one, Anna. Taylor. So there's a lot of water that's used in the fracking process, as I mentioned at the beginning, talking about what artificial turf is. When the ethane is extracted from the earth via fracking, there's a lot of water used in that process. And then another part of it is, if a natural grass field is maintained using organic and regenerative methods, more organic material will be in the soil over time, and then the natural grass will not require as much water as a natural grass or grass field that's maintained using synthetic methods. And the other part of it is to say that artificial turf does not use any water once it's installed is a little bit inaccurate, because as Taylor showed, those fields get very hot. And when the fields are that hot, in order to cool them down for the athletes to be able to use them, water is sprayed on the field. Also, the fields do need to be cleaned. If there's from feces from birds, or if any dogs get onto the field, or if someone is ill on the field, they do have to be cleaned. That uses water and disinfectants.
Thanks, Jean. Let's see. Margaret Illis, will the new hybrid turf fields be discussed? Our rec commission said it addresses many of the complaints regarding artificial turf.
Can I take that one? Beware of greenwashing, and specifically, if it's got plastic in it, it's not grass, it's plastic. And so, yeah, they might have some plastic and some natural grass combined, but the issue with the plastic blades is that they do deteriorate into the environment, and they're made with thread that it has PFAS in it. The PFAS is used to make sure that the plastic doesn't stick to the machinery that is making this thread. So during the extrusion process, and I think as people in the chat are saying, the synthetic turf industry has repeatedly said they need more time to get PFAS out of their product. And that's assuming they can get PFAS out of their product. And this is out of, after months, years of denying that there was PFAS even in there, which is exactly what they did when people were looking at lead. Denied it was in there, and then suddenly, oh, it's in there, but it's everywhere. So just a lot of this is greenwashing. And why would you need hybrid turf if you have a well-managed grass field? Most of the issue with grass fields is drainage and constructing them properly. So, I'd just be careful. You're going to hear a lot of it when you start actually paying attention to this stuff.
Just one other comment on the hybrid is that while there's only a small amount, about an inch of the plastic blades that show above the surface of the soil, those blades are actually about 7 inches long, so they're buried deep into the ground, and they wear out just like an artificial, conventional artificial field would. And then extracting those buried blades of grass is just a nightmare process. So I agree with Anna that the potential for contamination is just as high, even though it's billed as being a lesser amount of plastic. I think that's a debatable comment.
And we have some time for a couple more. Any effort to engage parents/coaches of youth athletes? My family who engage in year-round sports, as both coaches and players claim artificial turf results in more injuries.
I think it would be a wonderful thing to engage parents and coaches of youth athletes. And in fact, having those initial conversations before a new project comes up might help you avoid conflict in the community. I think it's important for everybody to work together sustainably, because if you just look at the heat aspect alone, I just can't imagine with our current climate crisis in 5 to 10 years, those, how hot those fields are going to be and how that will reduce playing hours. And also, another thing to pay attention to is that people think that you can get more playing hours with artificial turf, but in our community, they actually just had to lock the fields because the artificial turf was being used too much outside of organized sports, just recreationally. By people who wanted a place to play. I don't blame them. And it was getting really beaten up. And, the warranty for field turf, for example, is voided after 3,000 hours per year of usage. So it's not like it can be open 24/7. So I think having conversations with coaches, with sports leagues, with the parents of young athletes proactively is a really good idea.
Thank you, Anna. Okay. What should we do when existing artificial turf needs to be replaced?
Yeah, I can address that one, I guess. There was actually just this year a study done in Verona, looking at, it was by some college students, um, looking at exactly that scenario. You've got an old artificial turf field. Um, what is it better to just replace the carpet and make whatever repairs need to get made, or is it better to convert it back to natural grass? And I don't have the analysis at my fingertips, but the conclusion was that from a cost perspective, it is actually cheaper to renovate this field back to a grass field than it is to continue to have it as an artificial field with a new carpet. So if from a cost perspective, that it's probably a surprising conclusion, but that was the conclusion, that it's better, more affordable to convert it to grass, and then you have a natural surface and all the benefits that we've tried to convey in the webinar today.
Thanks, Greg. Perfect, 8 p.m. So just to wrap up, this webinar is being recorded, and I believe I can record the chat too. So participants, we can send over a follow-up email with the recording and the chat, and just follow-up information. I did put the bills regarding the Green Acres and statewide ban in the chat, but I can also put that in the follow-up email. And if you are interested in joining our coalition, shoot me an email. We'd be happy to have you. I think everybody's kind of in the same boat. We're fighting everything on a local level, but it's also really important to get some state legislation that would be helpful for everyone. And lastly, I was going to say something, but I forget. Thank you all for coming. Thank you to the speakers. And yeah, look out for our next webinar. Again, it's probably going to be in a couple months or so. We need a good holiday break. And if you have any other questions, shoot me an email. and we'd be happy to answer those and give you the proper information and research. And I know there were a couple of questions about the costs. We didn't go over the poll results, but 13% thought natural grass was cheaper, while 80 something percent thought artificial turf was. So you are misled. So hopefully you have all the proper information. And again, thank you so much for coming, and we look forward to seeing you at our next webinar.
Thank you for organizing. Thanks for coming.
Bye, everyone.